You know, there's a pretty big difference between old anime and new modern day anime. And as someone who is an enjoyer of both, I can see that they have their own specific way of doing things, whether it be their production, art style, or with newer animes. Well, I'm not sure, honestly. On one hand, we have all the classics, Spirited Away, Neon Genesis Evangelion, Neon Genesis, Dragon Ball Z, and then we have I Want to Eat Your Pancreas. Rascal does not dream of Bunny Girl Senpai, and is it wrong to try to pick up girls in a dungeon? Well, you know what they say, never judge a book by its cover, right? Now, despite the obvious oddness of these shows' titles, a lot of them actually were really well illustrated, and the stories were all surprisingly heartwarming and entertaining with only a few flaws, but so with every show. Rascal Does Not Dream, I'm not reading that entire name again, follows a pretty dramatic story that did indeed catch me off guard. I actually liked it, along with the other shows that I mentioned, all had good stories and beautiful animation. But now let's take a look at the classics. Neon Genesis Evangelion is a show some of you, probably most of you, have heard at least 10 times in your life. It's an absolute classic, and the hand-drawn 2D animation is just amazing. Though the story plot takes a little bit of time and it's a little slow, it's still totally worth watching. Dragon Ball Z is a super entertaining anime with a lot of cool fight scene visuals that are incredibly well made. The humor is great.
Okay, use your instincts, Kakarot. Right or left?
I'd have to say left.
Good. Then I'm going right.
That's not very nice.
And it's in general just a great classic, hand drawn and everything. With old anime, there's a certain magic to it that made it so unique, so different from what we have today. And a part of that is style. You see, with old anime, it was so much harder to produce and come out with amazing movies, which is why films like Dragon Ball Z or Escaflowne took so long to make, and each frame is hand-drawn and painted on paper. Escaflowne is a great example, as the show was done entirely by hand and paint, and despite that, the visuals and animation were astounding for its time. And speaking of time, it probably took a super long time to make due to all these limitations they had when the show came out. And even through all these limitations, all these shows turned out to be incredible works of art. And even if you don't like the style because you're a bitch who has bad taste, you have to agree that these shows are great, and I love them, and you should too, unless you're a bastard who only cares about how it looks. And then come along computers. It's no joke when I say computers played a big factor in the production of animes, and making it so much easier and less costly to come out with new ones. This also came with a lot of terribly written shows that have no value whatsoever. But even through the midst of these terrible shows coming out every fucking day, some of these turn out to be amazing, and some of them turn out to be my favorites. Like Love to Nubio and Other Delusions, Erased, and Toradora. Yeah, I like romance. All these shows having a lot of redeeming qualities that make them so fun to watch and relate to the characters. Well, probably not for me. But there's a lot of drastic changes that have come with the new generation of media. Like I mentioned before, newer shows tend to use the same type of animation style, making it hard to tell if something's from the same anime or not. Obviously, I don't care for how it looks, if you couldn't tell, but I think how it looks can play a big part in how good the anime is. Hear me out, okay? I really like this type of style. It's appealing to the eye candy, if you will. But when you try to focus on how something looks, you start to forget about everything else. I think that the show No Game, No Life is a prime example of what I mean. The show looks astounding and the visuals are so well done. I can see they put a lot of work into how it looks, but the writing is just awful in my opinion. It starts off with a fight scene of these cool mech type looking people duking it out in an arena, so maybe this show is about cool robots fighting each other. Now, it's about two radical gamer virgin shut-ins who nobody could defeat, but one day they get an email and somehow that email transports them into the gaming world. Yeah, I'm slightly confused too. So the whole 10-minute intro to this show is for nothing because the world they're in is completely different. It's a world where everything relies on games and gambling. And honestly, I think the show could have taken a much better direction if it went something like they clicked on the email and they were transported into the game that they were playing. But since they didn't have any of their computer trolls, they had to learn how to fight using their cool suits on their own. But it takes on a whole other story, and honestly, I think it could have been a little better. But the story is fine, I guess. But it's not just the story. I feel like a lot more modern animes are becoming more and more sexual. Now, I don't have a problem with that. Some of these these jokes are actually quite funny. And old anime did have some of these nosebleed scenes too, don't get me wrong. I just think that it's a lot more common in new anime, and especially No Game No Life. So my point I'm trying to make here is, nowadays it's hard to find an anime that focuses on its actual story, and it's not just No Game No Life. I could have used any run-of-the-mill modern anime, but there's just too much. I might as well just use this whole damn list as an example. This also has to do with the easy production time it takes for these shows, which means anyone can just spew out an anime in like a couple months, which totally takes away the value that anime used to have, where it took like years to make. There are still some animes that take years to make, don't get me wrong, but that's just a few out of the countless animes that probably took less than a year to make, just because it's that easy these days. Besides all that ranting I just did on modern anime, I think it's about time we talk about which is truly the better generation. It's a hard answer, honestly, but I think it's safe to assume that modern anime is indeed better, which is somewhat ironic considering I just ranted about the flaws of modern anime almost double the amount of time I talked about old anime. Now, the reason I think that modern anime is objectively better is because over time, directors have become more creative with their stories, and with the new day and age of anime, I've noticed a lot more heartwarming, sad, or dramatic animes, and all of them have become super good shows that I hold very dear to my heart, and the same with millions of others. Old anime will forever have a placeholder as the better anime, but let's be real here. Even though old anime has a very unique style of art and a forgotten technique of style, I found more fun shows from new animes than I have old animes. Shows that have left me stone cold from shock, like, holy shit, there's no way that actually happened, right? Both generations have their flaws. I get that. Even though modern anime objectively has more flaws than old anime, that doesn't stop it from at least having a good couple hundred shows that are totally worth watching. But at the end of the day, this is really just my opinion. If you like old anime better, I totally understand. That's completely fine. And in some ways I do agree with you. But for me, I just find more enjoyment in new shows. But sadly, this show has come to an end. And on that note, this has been Harlowski signing out.